I'm so not used to doing this anymore. This is not my first, nor my second, nor my third time trying to record this video. I keep having issues, so please bear with me. So hello, I'm back, and I will explain why I was gone in a different video, but first I want to talk about getting laid off in the year of our Lord 2024. Hi! It's been a while. Sorry. Hi, I'm Just Galaxy. If you don't already know me, welcome to the channel, and if you do know me, welcome back. So why am I back? Well, I recently found myself with a lot more free time on my hands. And by that I mean I got laid off, so I have time to make videos again. I don't talk about this often on my social media platforms, but up until the end of October, I actually worked for a large HR tech company in the marketing department. I landed there because I had been working at a tech startup, which was acquired in late 2021 after I had been there for about a year. Now, I did make a video a long time ago about working at a tech startup that got acquired and just sort of, well, frankly, they simply just ditched the entire marketing team. However, when the company I was working at in 2021 was acquired, things went very differently for me. And I decided to stay with the company that acquired us rather than fleeing the large corporate environment like many of my coworkers did. After all, I had never worked in an environment like this, and so I figured I might as well try it. And as you can guess, that leads us to me getting laid off October 30th, 2024, 2 months before Christmas with only 10 weeks of severance and 1 month of healthcare. Lovely, right? Little Christmas vacation. Don't get me wrong, I am happy to have any sort of severance package at all. I'm aware that many companies cut their employees loose with nary a thought of how they will support themselves afterwards. It's happened to me before, so I definitely know. But this layoff had a particularly insidious design that we're seeing more and more as companies continue to lay off, especially remote workers. So with literally hundreds of thousands of tech layoffs going on, I do want to clarify some things about what happened to me specifically. The company I worked for by no means was in some kind of financial downturn, nor were they seemingly preparing for the looming recession. Even as economists continue to warn about the dreaded second coming of the 2008 Great Recession, I think it's important to note that what happened to me was the elimination of my position due to a reorganization of my team. Basically, I was laid off because a new VP of content marketing was hired, and he took the US team down from about 12 to 3, or at least on paper that seems to be the case. Now, why am I making sure this is distinct and that you understand that going into this? It's because I think there is something deeply concerning about the continued restructuring of internal organizations when companies are doing well. And you might ask, how do you know the company was doing as well as you thought? Well, that's simple. The company was publicly traded, which means I can look at the historical stock prices and see that while the price is currently down, it actually peaked in early 2024. This information, combined with the fact that I sat in on a very positive earnings call earlier this year, leads me to believe that the company was in pretty good standing. Now, I know I'm not presenting you with any specific data about this, so you are welcome to take this with a grain of salt, but I am choosing to protect my privacy over telling you the name of the company that I used to work for, which I think is fair. However, I can show you the data for two comparable companies who were our direct competitors who actually have a lower maximum stock price. I'm not an economist. I'm sure people in the comments could give me all sorts of reasons on why this doesn't mean anything, but for the purposes of trying to say that my company was in pretty good standing, I think this is a good way of doing it. After all, these companies are very comparable to the one that I worked at. So I was not part of the great tech reset, as Forbes is calling it, and there's a good reason for why I'm making sure you have this context, I promise. The deconstruction of trust. Companies are under a microscope, especially large corporate ones where word can travel really fast about how they handle their layoffs. In an article from the Harvard Business Review posted in 2022, it stated that 85% of respondents rated job loss as their top concern in Edelman's 2022 Trust Barometer. The article goes on to explain that in 2020, we saw a significant economic downturn due to quarantine and the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we also saw a significant number of companies finding solutions to that downturn that didn't include layoffs. These were companies that were under the pressure of an unprecedented global economic crisis caused by a pandemic that managed to at least somewhat avoid layoffs. Whether it be by C-level leadership taking pay cuts or making no layoff pledges, workers saw companies trying to do right by their employees. Of course, we know that many of these things didn't last, which is why Edelman's 2024 Trust Barometer states that the 85% of respondents rated job loss as their top concern figure I mentioned previously has risen to 88%. I think it's also significant to mention that Edelman's 2024 Trust Barometer shows a decrease in trust in business leaders specifically, and has only shown a continued decrease across many of the metrics they measured in 2022. It's even more damning when you dig a little further into the report and see that the percent who worry we're being lied to by business leaders has increased 7% since the 2023 version of the report. So that's only in a single year. Keep in mind, 2023 is when we started to see that the tech layoffs were only going to grow and continue. In fact, I survived a round of layoffs at the company I was just laid off by in 2023 when they cut about 3% of their workforce. All of this is to say that layoffs tend to be worse for corporate trust, and people are more convinced than ever that business leaders are lying to them. With layoffs a constant looming concern in workers' minds and business leaders continuing to only, at least in my opinion, prove that they can't be trusted, I don't think it's surprising that layoffs feel harsher than ever, especially when big tech companies, such as one of the examples I used previously, who is having a banner year in 2024, restructured and laid off about 8,000 people. They offered buyouts and job changes to 8,000 employees in a restructuring plan. So they're giving their workers an ultimatum, because that's so much better than a layoff. Anyway, this all leads me to what I want to talk about next, which is the effect it has on workers. Surprising no one, losing your job is stressful. I'm not stressed. Look at me. I'm on YouTube. How could I be stressed if I'm on YouTube? So here's the thing. I don't think I really need to present a lot of data to show that losing your job in any economy is stressful. I mean, just look at this single paragraph in the Harvard Business Review article I mentioned earlier. Pause to read. And if you want more scientific studies, I would highly recommend looking at the articles which have cited the life events inventory rescaling based on an occupational sample over the last several years. Now, I'm suggesting you look at the article citing it because the study is actually from 2001 and I can't seem to find a more updated version of it, but more recent studies continue to cite it, which to me makes me feel like it's still a good resource if people are still regularly using it in their current studies. So keep that in mind. I mean, you even see losing your job pop up on diagnostic materials for stress levels, such as the Holmes Raw, I think I'm saying that right, life stress inventory, which lists it 8th on the list alongside personal injury, marriage, and marital reconciliation, and assigns it 47 points, whatever that means. Fun fact, I once took a diagnostic test like this at a general checkup, and my doctor pretty much immediately gave me a referral to a therapist. Okay, moving on. So we've established that losing your job is stressful and has long-term life effects, both physical and psychological. What I don't think people talk about enough is the stress of losing one's job when arguably the company could have kept them, they simply chose not to. In addition, I think how companies tend to do layoffs in a more remote world is something we need to talk about, but let's do the one about companies in good standing laying off employees first, mostly because I think that other thing could be a whole video on its own. Companies like SAP can talk all they want about how they're eliminating roles to help keep up with AI and machine learning. I think there's something to be said about the fact that they felt that they could only do this through a downsizing plan. The same goes for companies like Alphabet and Amazon, who have more than enough profit to keep workers and are simply choosing not to. Obviously with SAP, you could try to argue that they're trying to retain their employees with the job change and buyout offers, but when it really comes down to it, most advice for employees around these sorts of decisions suggests leaving the company for greener pastures. This is a method which may make the employee feel more empowered in the moment, but are they really? Obviously, with a lump sum buyout or severance package, they could potentially start a business or put it in their savings and hope to get a job before they need to use that money to support themselves. I'll admit that's what I'm doing with my lump sum severance package, is just kind of putting it there and hoping I can get a job before I need to use it. However, in a world where inflation is at an all-time high, interest rates have skyrocketed, and proposed tariffs are going to increase the prices of imported goods. If you don't get a job by the time you need to not tap into those funds, you're potentially staring down the barrel of an increasingly expensive economy with no prospects. That's something that happened to me when I found myself jobless in 2021 after my previous employer had been acquired. I was so panicked that I took a job which was not a good fit for me at all. I wound up leaving it in less than 2 weeks, and luckily I had gotten a position in the meantime, but I was so scared of being jobless with my severance package slowly drying up that I took anything, and anything wasn't right for me. Now, this is a mistake I'm hoping not to repeat this time around, but honestly, I'm not so sure that's possible. And while my experience is anecdotal, I do think it lends to a common experience for laid off employees. I don't think it's particularly surprising that there was a movement and accompanying pink banner displaying #desperate for job seekers on LinkedIn in 2024. Now, some of what has contributed to the pink banner is absolutely the fake job posts, which have plagued modern digital job boards for a while now, but that is a topic for another video, and I guess let me know if you want to hear it. But I do think that corporate layoffs have contributed to this, and while I think the destigmatization of being desperate for work in late-stage capitalism is a good thing, I don't think that the think pieces on this feeling of desperation are completely understanding the impact that said desperation can have on your career. I mean, when I got laid off, I walked into my situation fully knowing that I may have to take a pay cut. I was working in a large corporate company, making a large corporate salary, and facing large corporate bureaucracy when it comes to title increases and promotions. Prior to being laid off, I was trying to get a promotion to a senior title, aka I was looking to have the title Senior Content Marketing Manager. At a tech startup, this probably would have been much easier for me to get. However, in a large company, it's much harder, which meant that I spent the last 3 years with this company trying to get a title that I had more than earned. In fact, I had the same number of years of experience as many of my coworkers who had this title, and I also had the same responsibilities. I just didn't have the title because of the way that I was brought into the company when my company was acquired. Which means now in my job hunt in 2024, I have two options. One, fight for a Senior Content Marketing Manager title against people who might have 5 or 6 more years of experience than me due to the experience range under that title. Or 2, apply for content marketing manager positions where I will have 4 to 6 more years of experience than other people applying to move into that title, but could potentially mean either a lateral move where I do not receive a pay increase when coming into a new position, or even a pay decrease if I'm struggling to find a job with that title that is offering a salary that matches my years of experience. Obviously, this all comes down to personal choice, but I own a house. I have a mortgage. I have 2 living, breathing pets who I love very much that live with me, and I am concerned that there are social programs which will keep me fed and in my home that might be going away due to the future Trump administration and Republican majority. I can't necessarily make decisions on my employment based on what I deserve. I have to make them based on my cost of living. A 2017 study found that for men with 3 or more years of job tenure who lose their jobs in mass layoff events at larger firms reduces the present value of future earnings by 12% in an average year, and continues on to say the entire future path of earnings losses is much higher for displacements that occur in recessions. So I don't think when I say that this could affect my earnings over the rest of my career that I'm crazy. There is evidence out there to back up the idea that job loss could significantly decrease your total earnings for the entirety of your career, and it's worse when you get laid off during a recession. Now, we've talked about how layoffs ruin trust over time, that companies who restructure are actually just laying people off in a different font, and that laid off employees experience significant damage to their financial, emotional, and physical health. From here out, this is kind of all just my opinion about layoffs, but I am doing this to hopefully start a dialogue about all of this and to get people talking, because honestly, why aren't layoffs when a company is doing arguably well talked about more? It seems like most media coverage is for when the company may need to legitimately cut back so that they can keep the business afloat. And I know that this is essentially the corporate version of the trolley problem, but I think that's what I'm getting at here. Most of the suggestions for layoff alternatives like furloughs, pay cuts, and job sharing are for companies that aren't in good financial standing. These things wouldn't have applied to my layoff, and I think that these types of layoffs need to be discussed and studied separately from regular layoffs. When there is no corporate trolley problem in front of them, why do companies continually choose to harm their workers over developing the talent they already have in place? Why is it so common to see a new VP of a department come in and lay off a large number of employees in favor of bringing in people they have an existing relationship with, or attempt to do more with less people? I don't think it's surprising that almost all of the articles I've cited in this script that discuss the impact of layoffs have statistics stating that layoffs tend to hurt companies soft skills in a lot of significant ways. While it makes their numbers look better, it causes decreased employee engagement, higher turnover, and other major issues, which greatly impact the company over time. So why are layoffs in periods of organizational growth still so common? And why haven't all of these high-praised business leaders found a better alternative? I think it's time that we start asking them about that. Woo! Okay, hopefully this one works. Thank you so much for watching. I don't want the battery to die on my camera. You can support me by either getting on my Ko-fi, or you could buy my books. I have put out 2 books in the last 2 years. I will talk about them more in a different video. And if you have any questions for me, you can drop them in the comments. And yeah, thanks so much for watching. Have a good one. And has only shown an increased decrease. Everything's fine. This is only the 4th time I'm trying to record this. Capitalism. God, I've been at this for like 2 hours. I keep f***ing it up.